My doctor mom once brought me to her workplace at the psychiatric hospital and lost track of her most dangerous patient. She picked me up from school early for Bring Your Kid to Work Day at the hospital where she worked. Remember the rules, she said. Stay close. Don't speak to the patients. As we walked through security, she reviewed her patient list. Recreation hour would start in 10 minutes. You can observe from the nurse's station while I check on a few people. She handed me a visitor badge. Soon patients started filing in wearing regular clothes, not the straitjackets I had pictured. Mom pointed out her primary patient across the room. Nathan, he was younger than the others, sitting alone with a crossword puzzle. She'd mentioned him at home before. Brilliant but troubled, he'd been there 6 months for reasons she couldn't share. I'll just be a few minutes. Stay here, she said. She walked over to Nathan's table. He smiled and showed her something in the puzzle. Other patients played cards or watched TV. The place felt oddly normal for a psychiatric ward. About 5 minutes later, Mom came back searching her pockets. Have you seen my pen? The good one? No, I said. Did you leave it with that patient? I pointed to Nathan's empty chair. The puzzle sat unfinished. Mom's face went pale as she scanned the room. Nathan wasn't at the other tables. He wasn't by the TV. He wasn't in the recreation room at all. Code gray. Code gray, she whispered to a nearby nurse. The calm room turned to controlled urgency. Nurses started counting patients. Security arrived instantly. Recreation hour ended as patients were ushered back to their rooms, but still no Nathan. Mom grabbed my shoulders. Did you see where he went? No. I only looked away for 10 seconds, I said, my voice trembling. The ward locked down. Security searched every room and closet. Mom pulled up the security footage at the nurse's station. There was Nathan at his table. There was Mom walking away. Then Nathan stood up and walked out of frame. The head nurse studied the footage. Check my office. He knows I keep. Mom didn't finish. She ran down the hall. I followed despite being told to stay put. Her office door was wide open. The window behind her desk stood open too, 3 stories up with a maintenance ladder outside. Papers scattered on the floor, including what looked like her prescription pad. No, 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 Mom muttered, rifling through her drawers. What did he take? Security arrived behind us. Mom checked her coat pockets. My badge, my keys, my wallet with my driver's license, our home address. The room went silent. Nathan hadn't just escaped. He'd taken everything he needed to find us. Mom called Dad, but it went to voicemail. He's been planning this. All those questions about my family. I thought he was making progress. Her voice shook. They pulled Nathan's file. Page after page showed violent fantasies, obsessive behaviors, and disturbing drawings. 6 months of pretending to improve. 6 months of studying you. A psychiatrist murmured. Police escorted us home. From the outside, the house looked normal, but the front door was unlocked. Officers went in first. They came back shaking their heads. He's been here, one said. Your home office is ransacked. Family photos are missing. Inside was worse. Nathan had gone through everything. Mom's drawers were emptied. My school schedule was ripped off the fridge. Our family calendar had everyone's activities circled in red pen. Why, Mom? What does he want? I asked as she packed bags to leave. He fixates on female authority figures, she said quietly. He thinks they're secretly in love with him. The last doctor, she didn't finish. We left under police protection for a hotel downtown. Mom called Dad to warn him, and called my school to report my absence. Around midnight, her phone rang. She answered on speaker with police recording. Breathing. Then Nathan Sepp's voice. I have something for your daughter. A present. Check your car. He hung up. Police investigated, while we watched from the hotel window. They approached Mom's car carefully, opened the trunk with gloves. Inside was a box wrapped in birthday paper, even though my birthday was months away. They brought it back in an evidence bag. Inside were hundreds of photos, me at school, the mall, friends' Sep houses. At the bottom, a note: "She looks just like you. Same smile, same eyes, same schedule every Tuesday and Thursday." Mom collapsed. Nathan hadn't only studied her. He'd been watching me too, and we never noticed. The detective's phone rang. Another escape from a different hospital 2 towns over. That doctor also had a teenage daughter, also had her badge and keys stolen, also found her patient had been photographing her family. "Sep's not working alone," the detective said grimly. "This is coordinated." Then Mom got another text. This time from her own phone number, the one Nathan had stolen. It was a selfie of him standing outside my best friend's house, holding today's newspaper. "Your daughter has such nice friends. We should all meet properly soon." I didn't think. I just bolted for my friend's house 2 blocks away. Red and blue lights flashed behind me. My sneakers slapped the wet pavement as I ran. 2 officers jumped out and grabbed my arms before I reached the first corner. "Your mom called us the second you ran. Units are already on your friend's street," they explained, pulling me into the back of the patrol car. The detective's radio crackled with updates. As more patrol cars surrounded Alyssa's block, I pressed my face to the window, shaking, begging them to check if she was safe. We waited. 20 long minutes. Detective Estelle Rawlings arrived, short gray hair, tired eyes. She confirmed Alyssa and her parents, Gary and Maxine, were safe inside. Though startled by the sudden police presence, Nathan was gone, but he'd left signs he'd been there. Fresh footprints under Alyssa's window, cigarette butts by the fence where someone had stood for hours, scratch marks around the basement door lock. Alyssa ran out and hugged me, crying. Her mom kept checking the windows. Detective Rawlings gathered us in the living room. She laid out the new safety protocols. No school until further notice. No social media. New phone numbers. Completely random routines, with no patterns. Gary argued about his work schedule at the bank. Alyssa gripped my hand so tight it hurt. This was bigger than just Nathan now. Everyone knew it. Mom burst through the door with 2 officers and pulled me into a crushing hug. She apologized to Gary and Maxine repeatedly. She explained how Nathan studied his targets for months. Maxine asked how long he'd been watching their daughter. Mom couldn't answer. The detective's phone rang. Nathan's stolen credit card had been used at a gas station near the industrial district. Units were sent there immediately. But she warned us. These patients were too smart to stay where cameras caught them. Mom's face went pale when the detective said patients, plural. We were moved to a police-arranged safe house across town. The apartment smelled of old carpet and cleaning chemicals. Metal bars covered the windows. Panic buttons were installed in every room. Dad was flying back from his business trip but wouldn't arrive for hours. Every sound outside made me jump. I couldn't stop checking the locks. Detective Rawlings brought in tech specialists to track Mom's stolen phone. They set up laptops on the kitchen table. The signal pinged from a storage facility near the old train tracks. She took a tactical team while we waited. The clock creeping past 2 a.m. I chewed my nails down to nothing. The raid uncovered something worse than we imagined. The detective called to tell us. Detailed schedules and photos of 5 different families covered the walls. All had teenage daughters whose mothers worked in psychiatric care. Floor plans of houses drawn carefully. School schedules circled. Notes on each girl's habits, friends, favorite places. Mine had the most details, even what I ate for lunch and which bathroom stall I used at school. They also found wigs, fake IDs, stolen license plates. Nathan had been planning this for months, with help. The safe house door banged open. A woman in a gray suit walked in, carrying a briefcase. Maxine Underwood, from the hospital's risk management department. She started shoving papers at Mom, talking about liability, protocol breaches, and documentation. Mom's hands shook as she tried to read while Maxine tapped her pen. She wanted every detail of Mom's sessions with Nathan and asked why she hadn't reported his questions about our family. Mom's face turned red. She stood so fast her chair fell. Detective Rawlings stepped in, telling Maxine this was now a criminal investigation. Hospital matters could wait. Maxine argued about deadlines and insurance claims. The detective walked her to the door and practically pushed her out. Mom sat back down, head in her hands. The detective's phone rang. She opened footage from a neighbor's doorbell camera near Alyssa's house. A car had been parked there for 3 hours the night before. The detective zoomed in on the grainy video, catching part of a license plate. She typed the numbers into a database while I tried calling Alyssa's new phone. It rang and rang. Nobody answered. I tried again. And finally Gary picked up. He said Alyssa wasn't allowed to use the phone anymore. He had installed motion sensor lights around their house and was keeping her in her room with the door locked. Just then, the detective's computer beeped with search results. The partial plate number matched a rental car from the airport, booked under a fake name. The payment traced back to an alias tied to the second escaped patient. She pulled up his file and showed us his photo. He was older than Nathan, with lifeless eyes and pages of notes describing how he followed teenage girls from school. The detective said this confirmed they were working together and had planned it for months. My phone rang with an unfamiliar number. The detective nodded for me to answer. It was Alyssa, calling from her parents' landline. Her voice was quiet and shaky, as she explained her dad was sleeping in the hallway with a baseball bat, while her mom kept crying and checking the locks every few minutes. I told her we'd get through it, though I didn't know how. She said she missed normal life and wished we could go back just a week. The line suddenly cut off. Her dad must have overheard. A knock at the door startled everyone, but it was only a woman carrying a folder. She introduced herself as a victim advocate and spread worksheets across the table about safety planning and restraining orders. She explained how to change routines and notice if someone was following us. Mom kept interrupting to add details about Nathan's behavior and how he studied body language. The advocate wrote it all down, though I could see her getting uneasy. Mom went to her room and returned with a box of session notes from the past 6 months. She spread them across the floor and started highlighting sections, page after page, showed Nathan asking about our weekend plans, what I like to do after school, Mom's favorite restaurants, and where we went on vacation. One page had him asking if we had pets. Another questions about my friends. They had seemed harmless at the time, but now the pattern was obvious. Mom's voice broke as she admitted he had manipulated her completely. The detective photographed every highlighted page for evidence. The front door opened suddenly, and Dad rushed in, still in his business suit from his trip. He immediately started yelling about why we hadn't left town and driven to another state. Mom tried to explain, but he kept cutting her off, insisting we needed to leave immediately. The detective had to raise her voice to get his attention. She explained that running would only make things worse. Since Nathan had help and resources, they needed us here in controlled conditions to catch him. Dad's face turned red as he argued about using his family as bait. The detective's phone buzzed with an alert. An ATM camera downtown had caught Nathan using Mom's stolen debit card. She pulled up the footage, Nathan in different clothes, a baseball cap pulled low, but still clearly him. The timestamp showed it was only 3 hours earlier at a bank 6 blocks away. The detective called for units to search the area while we studied the image. Nathan looked calm, like he was doing routine errands instead of being hunted. She printed the photo and started making calls. Within an hour, a judge had signed an emergency restraining order, and police issued a bolo alert to every unit in 3 counties. Detective Rawlings assigned officers to watch both our family and Alyssa's family around the clock. Gary thanked her but said he was also hiring private security because he didn't trust anyone else to protect Alyssa. The rest of the day was spent reviewing safety steps and emergency plans. Around 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. Everyone froze. An officer checked, and it was a pizza delivery man with 2 large pizzas. Nobody had ordered them. The delivery was prepaid, and taped to the box was a note in Nathan's handwriting. "Enjoy your meal." The detective grabbed the boxes with gloves and called for backup. The order was traced to a burner phone, paid in cash, but the call location came from right outside our building. Nathan knew exactly where we were. We had 15 minutes to pack before being moved to another safe house. The new one was smaller and smelled strongly of carpet cleaner. Officers checked every window and door. At 9 a.m. sharp, the next morning, Mom's laptop chimed with a video call request from the hospital board. She sat at the kitchen table with files spread everywhere as 3 administrators appeared on the screen. They made her go over every session with Nathan from the past 6 months. They asked why she hadn't seen warning signs, questioned her judgment for allowing him into group activities, and pressed her on why she hadn't reported his questions about our family. One administrator kept interrupting about specific protocols she might have overlooked. Mom's hands shook as she flipped through notes. The hearing lasted 3 hours, ending with her being suspended pending full review. Her medical license was now under investigation. She closed the laptop and stared blankly at the wall. Later, the victim advocate arrived with a notebook for me. She suggested keeping a log of everything unusual. It would help build a case and give me a sense of control. I started writing down details. A white van that passed our safe house twice. A blue car parked across the street for 20 minutes. The neighbor staring at our door during his walks. My hands shook, but writing helped. She said even the smallest details could matter in court. I filled 5 pages that first day. Gary called to say he was installing cameras at his house. He had already canceled their family trip to Disney World, repeating that nothing mattered except Alyssa's safety. The locksmith was changing locks, while electricians wired a new security system. He asked if I wanted to stay with them when it was all over. His voice cracked as he said he'd help in any way possible. Detective Rawlings called Mom with new findings from the storage unit. Her team had recovered a key, matching the exact brand of Alyssa's house lock. Nathan had already made copies and could have entered any time. Gary was standing next to Alyssa's mom when he heard. She broke down in tears, while Gary immediately called another locksmith to change the locks again. They had been sleeping in that house, not knowing Nathan had access the whole time. The detective said this showed how long the plan had been in motion. That afternoon, Mom's phone rang with a number we didn't recognize. It was a reporter asking about the escaped patient case. She already knew Mom's name and that Nathan had targeted our family. The detective quickly took the phone and told her not to call again. She explained that media coverage could push Nathan to escalate. Likely, someone at the hospital had leaked information for money. The detective assigned an officer to monitor all media mentions of the case. Mom worried that if Nathan saw himself on the news, he would become even more dangerous. 2 days later, Detective Rawlings came to the safe house with a plan. She wanted to use Mom's stolen phone to send Nathan a message through cloud storage. The message would propose meeting in a public place with undercover officers ready to arrest him. Mom hesitated, but agreed. It was worth trying to end this. The tech team uploaded a file to Mom's account, accessible from her stolen phone. The message said Mom wanted to talk and understand his actions. Within 3 hours, Nathan replied. His long, rambling message insisted that he knew Mom loved him too. He suggested meeting at the farmer's market on Saturday morning near the flower stands. He wrote as though convinced it was romantic. The detective began coordinating the operation. She arranged for 30 officers in plain clothes to blend into the market, some as vendors, others as shoppers. Snipers would be on nearby rooftops, and unmarked cars would block exits. That night, Mom sat on my bed, and we had a serious talk. I told her I wouldn't act as bait for Nathan under any circumstances. She immediately promised they would use an undercover officer who resembled her. My safety came first, no questions asked. For the first time since this began, she put me above everything else. Saturday morning, we watched the operation from the police station on surveillance screens. The undercover officer wore Mom's jacket and carried a similar purse. From a distance, she looked enough like her. Officers were scattered across the market, pretending to shop. We waited for 2 hours, but Nathan never appeared. Then around noon, his accomplice showed up at the flower stand. He spoke briefly to the undercover officer, realized it wasn't Mom, and bolted. Officers chased him through the crowd, knocking over displays and startling shoppers. He pushed through people and ran into the parking lot. He reached the river behind the market and jumped in, even with police surrounding the area. The current carried him away, and helicopters searched from above, but he vanished. The detective slammed her hand on the desk in frustration. Later that afternoon, the tech team uncovered something new. Nathan and his accomplice had been using an encrypted forum where psychiatric patients shared information about their doctors. 3 months ago, posts had begun appearing about Mom. There were photos of our house taken from the street, our car in the driveway with the license plate visible, and even one of me walking home from school. The forum included posts about other doctors too, with their addresses and family details shared openly. It had hundreds of members trading advice on how to manipulate doctors and plan escapes. Nathan had been receiving guidance and support from patients across the state. The detective printed every post, while Mom read them through tears. She kept scrolling when her phone buzzed with an email from the hospital board, calling an emergency meeting the next morning about her handling of Nathan's case. We drove back to the safe house in silence, where Dad was waiting. The next day, Mom dressed in her best suit and logged into the video call from the detective's office. I watched as 3 board members questioned every step she had taken. They showed charts of warning signs she'd supposedly ignored and asked why she hadn't reported Nathan's repeated questions about our family. Mom explained that Nathan had appeared to be improving and reminded them he'd manipulated other doctors before her. They shook their heads, typed notes, and after 2 hours suspended her pending a full investigation. Mom quietly accepted their decision, but afterward I heard her crying behind the bathroom door while Dad kept saying it wasn't her fault, that Nathan had tricked everyone. 3 days later, I had my first video therapy session, with a counselor arranged by the victim advocate. She asked what scared me most, and I admitted I couldn't sleep, jumped at every sound, and felt like Nathan could be anywhere. She taught me a breathing technique, counting to 4 while inhaling, holding for 4, then exhaling for 4. We practiced together, and she explained how people like Nathan carefully study their targets to exploit weaknesses. She reminded me it wasn't my fault or Mom's, and that Nathan's illness made him dangerous. The exercises actually helped whenever my chest tightened. That afternoon, Gary called the detective in a panic. Alyssa had found something in their mailbox. When we arrived, he showed us a letter made of magazine cutouts saying, "Stop hiding her from me." The detective bagged it for evidence, though she doubted there would be usable fingerprints or DNA. Gary paced the room, saying he was considering sending his family out of state, but the detective warned that could make them even more vulnerable. 2 days later, a pawn shop owner reported that someone resembling the accomplice's cousin had sold Mom's expensive pen there and signed with a fake name. Surveillance footage showed the man looking nervous and checking over his shoulder. The detective explained, this gave them a lead on Nathan's network and urged us to stay strong a bit longer. That night, Dad became restless, and went to our house alone to grab clothes. The stationed officers called it in immediately, and the detective scolded him over the phone for breaking protocol. When he got back, he yelled about feeling useless and unable to protect us, punching the wall in frustration. The detective calmed him down, reminding him that following safety plans was the best way to protect the family. We then set strict rules. Dad could only leave with a police escort, nobody was allowed out alone, and everyone had to check in by text every 2 hours. The routine gave us some structure, even as exhaustion set in. Mom had dark circles, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The following morning, a rideshare driver tipped police that he had dropped someone like Nathan near the park where I used to play soccer. The detective realized Nathan was studying my old routines. She called the coach and canceled practice at that field, deciding we could no longer use familiar places. She and Mom discussed Tuesday, the day I normally had practice, suspecting Nathan might try something then. The detective moved practice to the police station gym with officers everywhere. Some parents complained, but the coach supported the decision. That night, Mom came into my room, apologized for letting work put us at risk, and promised she would always prioritize our safety. We cried and held onto each other for a long time. The next day, the detective used data from Mom's stolen car key fob to track Nathan's movements. Red dots on the map showed he had visited 3 other psychiatric facilities and several neighborhoods connected to other families. Each mark represented another family in danger. The following morning, Maxine from the hospital arrived at our safe house with 2 lawyers and a thick folder. She pushed past the officer and demanded Mom sign legal documents restricting her from speaking to the media. The papers claimed it was to protect everyone, but Mom refused, saying family's safety mattered more than reputation or funding. The lawyers tried to explain, but she stood firm. When Detective Rawlings arrived, she read the documents herself and told Maxine it was a bad look to silence victims. Maxine left with the lawyers, clearly frustrated. An hour later, the detective received updates from her team, tracking the accomplice's cousin. His phone signal led them to a highway motel. Officers surrounded the building, moved in at noon, and caught him in room 14. He tried to escape through the back window but was quickly restrained. The detective told him they had enough evidence to keep him in prison for years, and his only option was to talk about Nathan. He stayed silent as they booked him. Mom asked if Nathan would give up now that his helper was gone, but the detective warned he might become even more dangerous. That same day, Gary called with an idea. He offered to use his house as bait, since Nathan already knew the address. The detective agreed only under strict conditions. Officers would be hidden inside, and Alyssa had to remain at the safe house. Gary accepted immediately. The plan involved leaving a package on his porch addressed to me, pretending to be from Alyssa, hoping Nathan would take the bait. Officers began positioning around the house at 8 p.m., 2 in the garage, 1 in the basement, and more in unmarked vans nearby. At 10, Gary placed the package outside and went in to wait. The detective set up command at the station with Mom, while I was taken to a locked room at a different station with 2 officers. I couldn't sit still, pacing the small room, while one officer let me text Mom every half hour. She reassured me that nothing was happening yet and told me to stay calm. The hours dragged on unbearably. By 2 a.m., Mom stopped replying, which made me panic, but the officer said it likely meant something was finally happening. I pressed my ear against the door, trying to catch any sound from outside. At 2:14 a.m., the motion sensors at Gary's house detected movement in the backyard. A figure in dark clothes crept along the fence line toward the front. He avoided the streetlights and the visible garage camera but missed the tiny cameras hidden in garden ornaments. The detective instructed everyone through earpieces to hold position. Nathan paused near the porch, scanning the area for 5 minutes before reaching for the package. The moment his hand touched it, officers rushed out. Nathan tried to escape, but Detective Rawlings intercepted and used pepper spray after he resisted. Two officers secured him in handcuffs while he shouted about Mom, insisting she loved him but refused to admit it. They searched him and found Mom's badge, keys, wallet, and another phone filled with hundreds of photos of families, many we didn't know. The detective said this evidence alone would ensure a lengthy sentence. She called Mom at the command post to confirm it was over. Mom collapsed into a chair upon hearing Nathan was caught. At the station, Nathan's accomplice quickly asked to make a deal after learning of the arrest. He explained how the forum worked, gave names of other dangerous patients, and described Nathan's role in choosing targets and planning escapes. His cooperation would help protect dozens of families. The detective recorded everything as prosecutors prepared charges. 3 days later, Mom gave a formal statement to prosecutors, spending 6 hours reviewing every session and decision. She admitted missing signs because Nathan manipulated her empathy, pretending to improve while exploiting her trust. The detective reminded them that multiple professionals had been deceived, including another doctor at a second hospital. The prosecutors said they understood but confirmed the hospital review would continue. Mom quietly accepted responsibility. 2 weeks later, Gary called to show us the security upgrades at his home. 16 cameras covering every angle, motion alerts, reinforced locks, and panic buttons in each room. Alyssa could go outside in daylight again, though Gary still watched from the window. Our families began meeting for Sunday dinners, avoiding talk about Nathan, though the reason for staying close was clear. Returning to school, I was assigned a security guard named Logan, who shadowed me between classes. Students whispered and speculated, some asking if I was in witness protection. Alyssa met me at my locker each morning, and we walked to class with Logan 10 feet behind. The counselor allowed us to eat lunch in her office away from the questions. We tried to talk about normal things, but kept checking our phones for updates from our parents. 3 days into the school week, we were taken from class for Nathan's arraignment. Mom sat with the prosecutor, while Dad and I stayed with other families. Nathan appeared in chains, wearing an orange jumpsuit. His lawyer entered a plea of not guilty by reason of mental illness. The judge, reviewing the evidence, denied bail immediately. Nathan turned to mouth something at Mom before being escorted away. The following morning, the hospital review board met with Mom to deliver their decision. She presented binders of continuing education certificates, but was placed on 18 months probation, requiring supervision for patient sessions and additional training on manipulation recognition. Dr. Chen offered to mentor her, and other doctors admitted to being misled by patients themselves. The Victim Services Coordinator also helped us file insurance claims for locks, sensors, and counseling sessions. 3 weeks after Nathan's arrest, we had dinner without checking locks first. Dad cooked Mom's favorite pasta, and we watched a cooking show without jumping at every sound. That night, I slept 6 hours without nightmares. On Saturday, Alyssa invited me to walk to the corner store. After a long discussion, our parents allowed it with the condition we stayed together. We returned with candy and chips, our parents watching from the porch like it was a milestone. Soon after, Detective Rawlings shared more progress. 2 administrators from the forum were arrested, and mirror sites were shut down. She was now coordinating with federal agents to prevent similar cases. Mom thanked her repeatedly. My therapist helped me build a safety checklist, which the school counselor later shared with students. She even asked if Alyssa and I would speak at an assembly, something I agreed to consider if Alyssa joined. Through the victim advocate, we met other families whose doctors had been targeted. Their stories reminded us we weren't alone. We created a group chat for support, with Gary often sending memes to lighten the mood. Prosecutors later confirmed Nathan would face federal charges. Mom gave another statement regarding stolen prescription materials, potentially adding 10 years to his sentence. His accomplice took a plea deal for 5 years with possible parole. Nathan, however, was declared competent for trial and expected to serve 15–20 years. The hospital cleared Mom to return to work under Dr. Chen's supervision. She spent weeks creating new protocols on recognizing manipulative behaviors, which the hospital adopted system-wide. Other doctors began consulting her for advice. By February, we searched for a new home in the same school district, but with stronger security. On moving day, we laughed when Alyssa suggested digging a moat. Nathan's trial began in April, and the overwhelming evidence led to a swift conviction. He was sentenced to 18 years without parole. Mom skipped the sentencing, but later read the transcript, where Nathan still blamed her. Detective Rawlings reminded us that while his delusions would persist, at least he would remain locked away until my 30s. Our family began supporting others through advocacy groups, sharing what we learned. Dad created resources for families dealing with stalking cases. Alyssa and I started senior year together, applied to colleges with psychology programs, and wrote essays about wanting to help others through our experiences. Graduation felt almost normal. Though parents still scanned the crowd, Mom's safety protocols gained recognition, earning her a promotion to department head. She began training staff at hospitals nationwide on early threat assessment. When college started, I stayed in dorms but came home often. Alyssa attended a school nearby, and we stayed in constant contact. Both of us took psychology courses and later interned at advocacy centers, realizing we were good at supporting others. Family dinners continued, and Gary's moat jokes became a tradition. Mom published her work in a medical journal, earning national attention. Years passed with Nathan serving his sentence, and the fear faded. By graduate school, I realized weeks could pass without thinking of him. Mom spoke at conferences, Dad ran support groups, and Alyssa pursued law school for victim advocacy. 5 years after that first incident, our family bonds were stronger than ever. Nathan was no longer the focus. He was only a reminder of what we had survived and of why we chose to help others avoid the same. That's everything I wanted to share. If any part of it stayed with you, then it was worth telling.